Just want to call this meeting to order. This regular business meeting of the Waco Independent School Board is hereby called to order. All items discussed or voted upon this evening have been posted as required by state law. I just wanted to extend a warm welcome to those present and to our television viewers. The board's purpose is to set goals, listen to reports of the superintendent, approve budgets, contracts, and personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. We are not here to make management decisions or solve problems of individuals. Management is the responsibility of the superintendent and her staff. I just ask that you turn off your cell phones to silent if you have not already done so. And we just appreciate the time that you've taken to join us and your interest in the Waco Independent School District. Our first item is our oath of office for our three new board members, thank you. Three. We have 3 trustees. Are we meeting down at the? Yeah, so if they will proceed down here in front of the dais.
Just stand right there. If you want to hold that for all 3 of you. Y'all are going to do it together. Oh. As a notary public, I am honored to administer the oath of office. Please raise your right hand. In the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, please repeat after me. I state your name, do solemnly swear.
I, Angelo Ochoa, do solemnly swear
That I will faithfully execute the duties of the Office of Trustees
of the Office of Trustees
of the Waco Independent School District
of the Waco Independent School District
of the state of Texas
of the state of Texas
and will to the best of my ability
and will to the best of my ability
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution
and laws of the United States
and laws of the United States
and of this state,
and of this state,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Thank you very much and congratulations. You may take your seat up on the board. You can take your seat up there.
Yeah, Mr. Ochoa, Mr. Grant, and Mrs. Iazetti, welcome to the Waco Independent School Board. We are so excited that you guys are on the team and here, and we are, ready and excited to see this thing move forward. Poor Mr. Ochoa got the corner seat. The next item on our agenda is public comments. She is going to check right now to see if anyone has signed up to speak to an agenda item. No, you're fine. You're fine. Thank you so much. Okay, we have Peter Holmstrom. Sorry if a Strom. Strom, thank you so much. If we've had one or more persons sign up to speak, one person sign up to speak on the open meeting agenda item this evening. The board encourages comments about open meeting agenda items from members of the public. Anyone who has signed up to speak in advance of the meeting in accordance with the board procedures will do so in accordance with the law, board policy, and board rules. The board asks that each participant's comments pertain to the agenda item, which he has here, under consideration. Unless adjusted by the presiding officer, comments by each speaker will be no longer than 3 minutes per the time limit of the district's BED local. Patrons addressing the board will be notified by Mr. Vidania when they have approached the end of their allotted time to speak. Okay, Mr. Vidania, if you'll take time and let him know when you're...
Dear Waco ISD School Board members, thank you for taking the time and allowing me to express my concerns. I've been employed by the district for the past few years, and I'm about to wrap up my 3rd year as a 4th grade math and science teacher. I want to address the board in regard to agenda item 14 and 15. First, I want to say thank you for always being on top of making raises for your employees. I want to address and express my concerns regarding the suggested 3% midpoint raise. Continuing teachers will receive an expected raise of $1,675. Personally, I do not consider the raise that much, as we are set to receive a $500 raise next year, so in all actuality, it is an increase of $1,175. As you may be aware, many districts surrounding us have increased their teachers' pay well over 3%. For example, Killeen increased teachers' salaries this year 8%. Copperas Cove increased teacher salaries this upcoming year $3,000. Spring ISD just passed a 5.3% general, 5.5 to 5.7 raise based on teachers' years of experience. Lockhart, 8%. Lake Travis, 7%. Ames or Ennis, I'm not from here, so I don't know if that's how you say it, 5 to 6%. Round Rock, 5%. Hutto, 4%. Base salaries aside, if we cannot keep up with the rising cost of inflation, we are essentially taking a pay cut every year. Last year, the same study was conducted, and Waco was made aware that they are one of only 2 districts in the area that still does not, to this day, compensate teachers for advanced degrees. If I were to leave Waco and move to Killeen, I would make an additional $5,710 due to my master's degree, even after the proposed increase tonight. I would also receive a $2,000 relocation stipend. I say all this in hopes that you understand that a 3% raise does not appear to be sufficient to keep and retain teachers within the district. Leaving Waco is not my preferred option, but with a growing family, we have to consider all options. Even with the retention bonus I'm set to receive in December, I would still make approximately $3,000 more in Killeen. I can see that the district is making large budget cuts due to a decrease in enrollment. However, I also have seen over the year additional positions being created and stipends being added even more to them. Inflation is currently around 8%, and if you break down the numbers, a raise of $1,675 equals out to approximately $139 per month, or $70 a check before taxes. At that point, it does not even cover the costs that we're paying at the pumps. Furthermore, my family, like I said earlier, will be taking a pay cut due to the continued rise in inflation. Lastly, the potential increase proposed by Waco does not even cover the increase that is currently set in my rent. Something must be done. I hope that you're able to show that Waco continues to value teachers, and one way to do that is to provide competitive pay. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Holstrom. I appreciate that. Sorry, the next item is go into closed session. The Waco ISD Board of Trustees will go into closed session at this time pursuant of the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551 on items 551.071 and 551.074. We will reconvene from closed session and open session. We are going to, at this moment, move to item number 6, moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Moment of silence, yes. Okay, thank you. Sorry, and now the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to a republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. We are moving item number 7, consider and discuss to take appropriate action regarding the reorg of the board. We will move that to the end, and we're going to go ahead and begin our special recognition portion of the meeting this evening.
Good evening. Each month, one campus selects 2 students to lead the Pledge of Allegiance at the regular business meeting of the Board of Trustees. For the month of May, we have Andrea Lara Zarazua and John Quavion Johnson from Indian Spring Middle School.
If the board would come down in front of the dais, we'll.
Yes. Andrea's in 7th grade, and her favorite subject is reading. She plays volleyball, soccer, and likes to spend time with her family. When she grows up, Andrea wants to be a real estate agent and own her own business. Thank you to Andrea's mother, Miss Maribel Lara, for being here tonight and sharing your wonderful daughter with us. John Quavion is also in 7th grade, and his favorite subject is math, and he likes to play games and basketball. He also wants to be a business owner when he grows up. And thank you to Ms. Sharelle Johnson for being here tonight and sharing your amazing son with us. And thank you to Dr. Love, Indian Spring Assistant Principal, for being here tonight with your students. Next, we are recognizing our UIL State Theatrical Design Contest Award winners. The UIL State Theatrical Design Contest was held Wednesday, May the 4th in Round Rock at the Round Rock Performing Arts Center. The purpose of the Theatrical Design Contest is to foster an appreciation for good theatrical design, to increase the number of schools that we have adapted technical theater as an academic subject in school curricula, and to learn to win and lose graciously while fostering a friendly rivalry among schools. Each school submits designs to the UIL office as directed in the current theatrical design guide, and this year's design prompt was the play Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express by Ken Ludwig. Maricela Suarez, senior at University High School, qualified as a state finalist in Division II set design. And Bailey Barton, senior at Waco High School, qualified as state finalist in Division II costume design and placed 4th in the state for her design work. Yes, and thank you for Katie Davis for being here. Next, we have the Visual Arts Scholastic event. The Texas Art Education Association has sponsored the Visual Arts Scholastic event, or VASE, since 1994. VASE is the only art event of its kind in the nation, and only academically eligible high school students in grades 9 through 12 from throughout the Texas can participate. VASE's mission is to recognize exemplary student achievement in visual arts by providing high school students and programs a standard of excellence in which to achieve. The state VASE event was held at San Marcos High School on April 30th of 2022, and the following students received recognition at this event. Maritza Degullado advanced to state and won a gold medal Division III All-State. Lily Bien advanced to state and won a gold medal in Division III All-State. And Juliana Ayala advanced to state and won a gold medal in Division I All-State. Xander Lim also advanced to state, making this his 4th consecutive year to advance to state. He won gold medals in Division I, II, and III for 3 consecutive years, his first Waco ISD student ever to advance to state for 4 consecutive years of VASE participation. In total, he's accrued 8 regional, 4 state qualifying, and 3 state medals. Next, we have our Dell Scholars. The Dell Scholars program was designed to provide a support system for challenges many students face while pursuing a degree. Dell Scholars receive the following financial support: $20,000 scholarship. They also receive a personalized, multifaceted support for the academic, financial, and emotional life challenges during college, a laptop computer, $500 annually for 4 years of textbook credits, and access to teletherapy services to connect students to professional counseling. The following high school students were selected and named as Dell Scholars from University High School: Elizabeth Sanchez, Karen Salazar, and Saul Rangel. Next, we have the Heart of Texas Regional History Day Awards. The Heart of Texas Regional History Fair competition was held at Baylor University on February the 25th. It's an affiliate of National History Day in Washington, D.C. Each student chooses a historical topic in any subject that is relevant to the annual theme, and this year the theme of the history fair was Debate and Diplomacy in History, Success, Failures, and Consequences. Students conduct research using primary and secondary sources, analyze and interpret findings, and create and present original research papers, exhibits, performances, and websites or documentaries. Additionally, they submit a process paper and an annotated bibliography. Mark Gaitan placed third with his individual website creation, the Berlin Conference 1884 to 1885. Kaylee Dury and Madison Vigil placed second with their group website creation, the Debate on the Nature of Eugenics, and advanced to the state competition. And Adamaris Estrada placed first with her individual performance, A Wine Stain on the Flag, and advanced to state as well. Next, we have a scholarship presentation. The Texas Caucus of Black School Board Members, the TCB-SBM, has partnered with donors to make 2022 scholarship opportunities available to students who are graduating the TCB-SBM member districts. The TCB-SBM TASB 2022 scholarship provides one-year scholarships for up to $3,000 to 10 African American students with academic achievement and financial need working towards a first-year college degree. Fields from consideration include business, finance, management, coding, education, technology, engineering, marketing, law, and related fields. Trustee Davis and Trustee Guillory would like to present a check for the TCB-SBM TASB Scholarship to University High School senior Dalen Sauls. Congratulations. Next, we have the Linebarger, Gogan, Blair, and Samson Scholarship, which provides one-year scholarships for up to $1,000 to 5 African American students with average academic achievement and financial need working towards a community college degree or trade school certificate. Trustee Davis and Trustee Guillory would like to present a check for this scholarship to Waco High School senior Avion Thomas. Congratulations. And I also want to share that this is the first time Waco ISD students have been recipients of these scholarships. And next we have the Uil Band Competition. UIL aims to provide healthy character, building educational activities carried out under rules, providing for good sportsmanship and fair play for all participants. Participation teaches kids that it's a privilege to represent one's school. The University High School Band participated in the UIL concert at sight reading competition on April 21st and 20th. The varsity and non-varsity bands each earned the highest rating a band can receive, superior. This was the first time in university high school history that both groups earned sweepstakes. And the Waco High School Band also participated in the UIL concert and sight reading competition, and the varsity band earned a superior rating in concert, with the non-varsity band earning a superior rating in sight reading. Do we have somebody here to do that? Where's Mr. Carpenter? And here to receive the certificate is Mr. Larry Carpenter. Waco High School band members also participated in UIL solo and ensemble contest, and the following students earned superior ratings. For brass quintet, Zario Greer, Devin Cook, Emma Worth, Ivan Lorenzo, and Juan Camacho. Brass quartet, Thomas Hannigan, Tevin Parker, Soledad Valenzuela, and Astrid Lopez. Brass quartet, Ernesto Lopez, Daniel Alcaron, Mauricio Rivera, and Uriel Ramos. Brass quartet, James J.D. Reed, Luis Garcia, Jacob Zuniga, and Dario Contreras. Percussion trio, Jordan Diaz, Hans Sellers, and Mario Flores. Trumpet solo, Zario Greer. Multiple percussion solo, Darius McGlynn. And marimba solo, Jordan Diaz. Congratulations. Congratulations. Each month, Waco ISD recognizes a community partner making a difference for students with the Waco ISD Award for Outstanding Community Partners. The recognition celebrates the theme for 2021 school year, We Are Waco ISD, and acknowledges that it's not just our employees and students that make Waco ISD a great place to learn and to work and to teach. In May, the district is recognizing Voice. Voice's mission is to empower children and their families to lead healthy and productive lives by promoting success in education, nurturing wellness in mind and body, and developing skills in tomorrow's global leaders. Voice achieves this in Waco ISD by providing school supplies for students, snacks for tutorials or Saturday school, offering drug prevention incentives, providing presentations for Tobacco-Free Month, providing food and clothing items for school pantries, and their CAP program aids students and their families to navigate the federal student aid application system. And they assist with college readiness, among other things. Here tonight to accept the award for voice are Cheryl Allen, Director of Program Advancement, Derek Bledsoe, Program Director, and Maria Macias, Program Director. Thank you so much. And that concludes our special recognitions. Thank you.
Not that our board meeting isn't invigorating and lively, but we are just going to give a second for people to leave. And then we'll continue. Okay. We are moving on to our next agenda item, which is agenda item number 9, Superintendent's Report. Dr. Kincannon.
All right, well, good evening. I have a few items for the board tonight. I want to start off by talking about a little bit about graduation. So in just 1 week, we'll be graduating students from the class of 2022. University High School's ceremony will be held on Thursday evening, and that's May 26th at 7:30 p.m. And Waco High School ceremony will be held on Friday, May the 27th, and it will be at 8 o'clock p.m. It's on Friday evening. Both events will be at the Waco ISD Stadium, where a clear bag policy will be in effect. And then the following week, Brazos High School, for the first time, will have their own graduation on Friday, June the 3rd, at the University High School Performing Arts Center at 6 o'clock p.m. We're expecting 328 graduates from University High School, 368 graduates from Waco High School, and 85 graduates from Brazos High School. And of course, you guys know with seniors, some of them need till the last minute and to meet their graduation requirements, so that number could fluctuate either way. And of course, certainly that is the case this year, and our staff is monitoring and supporting our students to get those credits completed. We are expecting to have students who need to work during the summer to finish. Right now we're projecting about 40 to 50 students will be finishing up their credits this summer. And we're just excited about having graduation next week for the class of 2022. I've given you a seating chart for the stage, and you probably need to get there about an hour early. And Coach Love has planned a meal for us at the stadium, so the board can join early, and we'll get ready and walk down together onto the field. So I'll see you next Thursday evening at an hour before 7:30, so 6:30 p.m. on Thursday evening for University High School's graduation. Always a wonderful time. Next two items are related. Behavior Academy for campus teams. As you know, we've had ongoing concerns regarding behavior, and so we are planning to launch a district behavior academy on June the 2nd, and that will be with campus teams from each of our schools, and the goal will be to have those teams plan for the implementation of systems and supports for next school year at their campus. And then the entire academy will consist of 6 days of training throughout the school year. So we'll be checking in with them. We'll be using May Kaufman from Emergent Tree, and we're really excited about bringing all those campus teams together to work on behavior. And then tightly associated with that is a new behavior boot camp for new teachers. And It's not unusual for new teachers to struggle with classroom management and behavior, and we have a lot of new teachers in Waco ISD, and you'll hear a little bit more about that this evening in the TASB's report that Ms. Barton will do. But we need to build capacity in our new teachers to manage behavior as quickly as they can. And so we're planning a new one-week behavior boot camp for new teachers. So we're planning to pay new teachers to come in even before new teacher orientation for 5 days and really start working on classroom management and behavior strategies. And then they'll get a little bit more at new teacher orientation, and then they'll work with their principals on their campuses. But we're excited about offering that this year. We'll be using some of our ESSER funds that we set aside to offset the costs of that boot camp. We're calling it a boot camp. Also, slightly connected is our Waco High School Design Thinking Studio that was held on Monday at TSTC, and we invited Professors Julie Schell and Tammy, there's some pictures there, and Tammy Glass from the University of Texas School of Design and Creative Technologies to come and work with our students, and they conducted a one-day design thinking studio for Waco High School students only. And what the professors did was to teach the students and the faculty who were there about design thinking, and then they engaged in a design sprint activity that was focused on capturing the students' ideas for creating a great first week of school for the fall of 2022 for Waco High School. And the purpose of the event was to create some space to hear from our students so that they had a voice in their school and really to learn from them how we can meet their needs and connect with them. And I had a great time, got to talk to most of the students who were there. And what I learned, what we heard, was that they want school to be fun and engaging, like every student wants. They want the opportunity to connect with their peers and with their teachers. They value clubs and organizations that they can belong to. They love special events, rewards, and celebrations. And they all had to make presentations at the end, and they wanted to make sure that we knew that they really liked pep rallies and they really like food as a part of celebrations and rewards. So it was great to hear from them. I want to thank Yolanda Williams for being the facilitator and organizer of that event, directly making sure that everything was set up and organized. She was there and assisted. I was there. We had approximately 30 students from Waco High School. I do have all of the posters and the projects and ideas that the students came up with, and I will be sharing those with the new principal of Waco High School after we name a new Waco High School principal. So I've held on to those. They're in my office. And I, because we solicited their input, I really think it's important that we use their ideas, not only just the first week of school, but throughout the school year. So that was really exciting. And then finally, the Waco ISD Education Foundation grant update. Our foundation visited, and thank you to Emily Iazetti for attending a lot of those award ceremonies today. There were 12 campuses who were awarded 24 grant applications, which were approved for funding for next school year for 22-23. A total of $111,353 was awarded, bringing the amount of grant funds over the past decade and a half to more than $2 million from our foundation. The projects span a wide array of topics from areas such as health sciences, enhanced literacy programs, outdoor classroom experiences, performing and visual arts, and engaged learning for special populations. And we're just thankful to the foundation for supporting our classrooms. Would you like to add anything?
And the pictures on the screen, we also got to recognize this week the
primary and secondary first-year teacher of the year. That's the Virginia Dupuy Award, and so we got to recognize those teachers as well earlier this week.
Thanks. I think we got those pictures mixed in, but thanks for pointing that out. That's good.
Lots of good recognition happening.
A lot of great recognition. We're running fast. What was your favorite project, Mrs. Izzetti?
We had so many wonderful projects that teachers applied for. I'm trying to remember all of the different things. We heard about some really interesting touch screen devices that they're going to use in math classrooms, where they'll be able to move the screen around the room and have multiple students working the touch screen at one time. Projects where students will learn flower arranging in order to recognize the leaders on their campus and the special guests on their campus by giving them a flower arrangement they've made. Really interesting things that our teachers are coming up with to give really special experiences to our students and add to learning.
Great. Well, thanks again for participating and representing the board on the foundation board. Appreciate you. That's all I have this evening.
Okay, we will move on to item 10, the consent agenda. Are there any items to be pulled? Okay, if not, I will entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Make a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, decision is unanimous. We'll move on to item 10, consider and discuss and take appropriate action regarding guaranteed maximum price for Waco High and site utilities, paving, structural steel, and roofing. Ms. Barrera.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Kincannon. Had to find my glasses, sorry. So, the item we're talking about this evening, consider, discuss, and take appropriate action regarding guaranteed maximum price, GMP number 1 for Waco High School, site utilities, paving, structural steel, and roofing. Back last fall, the board hired Rogers O'Brien as the construction manager at risk to assist O'Connell Robertson during the design phase by providing estimating services, constructability reviews, recommendations for how to phase the project. And they've been doing that since, I guess, late last fall, December. It's a very challenging time to be doing this right now. And one of the strategies that the team came up with was to phase the project over multiple phases, because as you know, we're rebuilding Waco High School while Waco High School stays operational. So this project will have 6 different phases, and the GMP number 1, amendment number 1, addresses phase 1. And initially, we had planned that this construction would start in August of this year. But after the team worked on the phasing plan, they realized they really needed to get some parking in place before school start so that they can move forward right away into the construction of the new building. So that's what GMP number 1 allows us to do. That's why it's an early start, 2 months earlier than we thought we would initially start. But it'll get us some time to get ahead of things. Let's see. It does, I mentioned it includes the construction of the parking lot. It also includes roofing and structural steel. It includes, or we're recommending that you approve alternate, starts with an A, number 8, which is a credit for, or a lower cost for a roofing material. But this is a very solid roofing material. It's one we've used in the district before, and we're comfortable with it. But it does save us about $500,000. So we want to go ahead and accept that alternate now. There are other alternates that we will be considering when we bring the next GMP to you, which will be in August. But we don't want to move forward with any other alternates until we see how we're doing on the overall total project cost. Let's see. GMP number 1 is under the cost estimate that Rogers O'Brien provided to us for this scope of work. So we are tracking within the budget right now. And like I said, GMP number 2 will be coming in August, and that will include the remainder of the phases. Wanted to also mention that GMP number 1 represents 46%, more than 46% local contractor participation. So,
Are there any questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve GMP number 1 for Waco High School, including alternate number 8, that we authorize the superintendent to sign amendment number 1 with Rogers O'Brien and execute the notice to proceed on the scope of the work associated with GMP number 1.
Second.
Okay, great. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, decision passes unanimously. Item number 12, review and discuss Waco ISD's preliminary property values and budget projections. Mrs. Davis, who traveled here from Austin and is heading back tonight, so we appreciate you taking the time to be here with us.
It's my job. Okay, so tonight, the main purpose of tonight's meeting really is, under the law, within 120 days of adopting a budget, I need to discuss with you our property value appraisals, which were very high this year. But we're going to talk about a few other things before we get to that. And then we're going to tie it out with looking a little bit at what the base budget looks for next year. So we're going to start with enrollment. We've talked about that a little bit. We've talked a little bit about the hold harmless, but we've got some new numbers on that because TEA kind of finalized those calculations. Then we're going to talk about where it looks like we're going to end up the current year. Then we'll talk about those property values and the projected tax rates from those values. Remember, as I said, don't get these numbers stuck in your head. They're still preliminary. And then we'll talk about the general fund and what the base budget looks like at this point. This is our enrollment so far this year, or what we're looking at for this year and then going into next year. You can see the comparison with prior years. We talked at the last meeting that we were down, and that second column you see is our fall PEAMS enrollment. That takes place the last Friday in October every year. And so I always use that same number because I can always get back to it for one thing, for comparison purposes. But as you can see, year before last, 1920, it was 14,796. 2021, it was 14,428. This year, the fall PEAMS number was 14,086. And I have taken it down 66 students. It does look like, and looking at the projections right now, that our high schools could still, that's where a lot of the decrease was this past 2 years. And it looks like that would probably continue another year. As I told you all at the last meeting, I went up this year in my projection. You can see over there on my budget projection, we lost those 400 kids. I brought back 200 of them in my projections this past year, thinking that they would be coming back. And instead, we lost another 340. So I'm being conservative this year because I don't want to overstate the revenues. But at the same time, when we look at the next year's budget, we're not probably going to cut everything we need to get to where we need to, because I'm hoping that my numbers are still very conservative. Anyway, so looking at that, it's 1486 for the current year. Right now, our ADA per our PEAM submission, this is without hold harmless, will be 11,832. It's projected to be that, and I have numbers through the 5th 6 weeks at this point. That is an 84% attendance rate for the current year. And you can see in those prior years, now 1920, that was the actual 76.6%, was even lower, but that was without the last 6 weeks. We were held harmless on that. I do have out to in the far column, the various methods that TEA has used over the last 3 years to hold us harmless. It's been different every year. But anyway, that 84% of attendance is 6% less than it normally is. And that's a huge percentage. That's huge dollars for us. That probably runs about, I would say, about $9 million on our current revenue. So looking at the TEA summary of finances, though, because they are going to hold us harmless, it looks like that's going to be about $12,402 for this year. What they're going to do, and I've got a slide on that, they're basically going to hold us harmless for the first 4 6 weeks, but not for the 5th and 6th 6 weeks. So the ADA we had used for budget purposes was 13,261, so you can see that's 860 kids less than what we had projected, hence me being conservative for next year. Anyway, so right now I'm also bringing up the attendance rate for next year on our projections. I'm not bringing it up to the 90% that we normally run. I'm bringing it up about 88.5, which is the average of the 84 and the 4 prior years, including 1920 at the hold harmless, not the 76.6%. But I'm using 88.5, which will give us ADA for budget purposes of 12,337. Now, this is that calculation for the current year on hold harmless. As I said, this is our actual attendance for the first 4 6 weeks you see up there in the top. And the average of what that attendance was, that is an attendance of 87.9%. The target percentage based on the 2019-20 ADA was 94.21%. So that would give us what their targeted percentage attendance rate applied would give us 12,777. Our 5th 6 weeks, and as I said, 5th and 6th 6 weeks are not going to be held harmless. Our 5th 6 weeks was down to 11,739. And using prior year patterns, projecting the 6 6 weeks, that would be 11,565, which would give us that annualized ADA of 12,402 that I talked about before. Now, that hold harmless amount there does generate about $5 million for us in the current year. So it does help out our ending position in the current year. This is what the current year looks like at this point in time. This is as of the end of March. I'll keep doing some projections as we go through the summer to make sure that it's still tracking with what we're looking at here. Our beginning fund balance was $53.5 million. Our revenues, you see, local revenues, and you'll see the difference here when we get into what next year's going to look like because of those property values going up. You'll see that shift in local and state revenues. But right now, our local revenues are about $79.5 million. State revenues were $77.9, and our federal revenues are $4.3. That's a little bit higher than they normally are, but we are getting an unrestricted indirect cost rate off ESSER funds. So whatever we spend in ESSER funds, we're getting about 10-11% back into our general fund for indirect costs. So that's helping out the general fund as well. And then our other resources and uses that you see there, those are transfer payments. We have a number of funds that we run in special revenue funds that you'll also see as you adopt budgets in August. Those are, we're fiscal agents for. That's GUAMA and GUACA, and then the Day School for the Deaf. Those all run in special revenue funds, and their revenues oftentimes don't cover their expenditures, and so that's a transfer that right now I'm projecting we'll need to do to cover their balances at the end of the year. So that gives us expenditures and uses over revenues and resources of $6.8 million. Now, about $5 million of that was planned. We had, going into last year, we had planned the Paul Tyson project and the CNS walk-in cooler freezer projects. We knew those were going to draw down the fund balance. The Paul Tyson project was about $9 million. We were going to get about 2.3 from the city, from the county, and we did get $1 million of that this year, which is in that revenue, that local revenue that you see. There is also built into next year's budget another $1 million that we'll get in a payment from them, and then the third portion of it will come in the following year. But we had really expected, when I talked to the rating agencies, I told them we'd be down about $5 million because of those two projects. So right now, it's 6.8. We are talking about, we do have $4 million in ESSER funding that is kind of set aside to help cover deficits in the, see, I use that word now. Got me using it, in the general fund. So we have been planning, we've kept that kind of, we had about $2.5 million originally, and then we've identified up to about $4 million that we could move. So we're looking at maybe moving $1 million or so in the current year, and then using maybe the rest of it in next year's budget to help offset the deficit there. Anyway, okay, so these are the local property values. And when I first got these, I think I told the board last time that I emailed the chief appraiser back and said, did you spill something on a piece of paper? Because these were so high. Actually, his original ones were like 31, one was 31, and then I got one for 33, but that was before the homestead exemption change. So this is after the homestead exemption was changed by the voters, and so it's at 29.3% right now. You can see what those net taxable values have been, the preliminary values, running $7 billion the last few years, $10.2 billion this year. Certified values, that's based on that's the chief appraiser's estimate of where our certified values are going to be, with a value adjustment of about $417 million downward with appraisals and all. Now, he did say he didn't expect the challenges, appeals to maybe get that much because they're still under market value, and with the change in the law, if the properties are under market value, then they don't get, they don't award the appeal. So that is about a 4% change from the preliminary values, but it's a 29.3% increase over last year's certified values. So that's what our tax rate, when we get ready to calculate the tax rate, it's going to be based on those values, or the final certified value, as I said. So this is the impact of that $40,000 homestead exemption that was just approved by the voters. With the previous homestead exemption was $25,000, and under this current scenario, that totaled $337 million. With $40,000, that totals $539, almost $540 million. So the net taxable value under the old exemption was $9.9 billion. It's $9.8 billion under the new homestead exemption. Our freeze goes down a little bit because with that $40,000 exemption, it brings the frozen values down a little bit. So it was $861.5 million. It's now going to be $773.9 million, with a freeze-adjusted taxable of $9.1 billion before, and right at $9 billion now after the homestead exemption increased. So the total impact on the district is a decrease in taxable value of $202 million based on that increase of $15,000 for the homestead exemptions. So School First requires me to have this discussion with you as part of our financial accountability, that make sure you're aware of what happens with our property values. Our current year's certified property values are used in formulas to calculate our state foundation school program revenue. And they basically, our tax collections represent our local share of our revenue, and that's our match to get our state revenues. The district now we now have to calculate our state values. The state values used to lag a year, and so we always knew what those were going to be. Now we don't exactly know what those state values are because they're not quite the same as what our local values are. There's a few differences. They're primarily related to local exemptions and deductions. I mean, such as we have the Freeport exemption that we offer locally. We offer exemptions on leased vehicles, pollution control, and solar energy deductions. The state does not recognize those. So there's some differences there in making those calculations, but they do it for us. We don't have to do it anymore. They do it, but unfortunately, we don't know until the first part of August what those numbers really are. So right now, we've estimated the 2022 T2 values for the foundation school program funding with those changes at about $8.6 billion. So this is what the tax rate will look like. So in 1920, when the legislature met, they enacted House Bill 3, which was a major change to school funding. And part of that is major change also to the way the tax rate is calculated. And so the district at one point in time, it's been many years now, probably since 2005, since we really could set a tax rate, any rate we wanted, up to $1.50, I guess, on the M&O side, and benefit from that from an increased tax rate. We really have not benefited from a increased tax rate since 2005-06, because they started limiting what we could set for a tax rate. With the HB3, they changed that even more because they were very concerned that property value increases were so high and the tax revenue was getting so high. So they put in a mechanism in the law that automatically reduces the tax rate, compresses the tax rate as your values go up. And so there's a couple of tiers involved in that calculation. First, the state looks at that, and they have set in law that whatever the state average increase is in property values, over 2.5% is compressed. That's the first rate of compression. The state decided this year is 4.36% across the state. So that was the first rate of compression. Then they look at the local values and what they did. And if they're more than if they increase over the 2.5% more than the state increased, then you have a second compression. If we're less, then we don't have a further compression. But if we're more, we compress again. They did put a floor in there. That floor is, as you see in that second bullet, it's 80.46% or 80.46 cents. And so that's where our compressed rate will be for this coming year. I have a question that I need to get clarified. They do show, the state is showing that our TIF 1 exemption expires in this year and won't be eligible for it next year. And I think it goes another year, but I'm going to confirm that between the city and the state and see what that is supposed to be. Anyway, that's that $530,000 that you see there about 5 lines down. So I did take it out, but it makes no difference in the tax rate. So, either way, it will make a difference on our debt rate. So I need to get that clarified. So anyway, we come down as we talked about what that comptroller's T2 value is probably going to be at that $8.5 billion. And so our tax rate comes down to this calculation. As I said, it compresses at the state rate, it compresses at the local rate, and it gets down to this 80.46 floor. That's tier 1. Then we have our enrichment tax that it has to be voter approved. Now, back in 2015, we had a tax ratification election, and the voters approved an additional 17 cents of tax rate. When HB3 was enacted, it also compressed part of that tax rate because that tax rate was built of 2 pieces, which was level 1 and level 2 of tier 2, which is the guaranteed yield, which is Robinhood. Anyway, so tier 1 is golden pennies and tier 2 is copper pennies. Now, copper pennies were compressed. 2 of the cents from copper pennies moved to gold pennies, and then they compress the copper pennies. So our 17 cents that we approved is now 13.83 cents. So we lost some of that as well in HB 3. So, but we get to keep the 13.83 cents, and we add that to that 80 cents. So that gives us a tax rate of 94.29 cents for M&O for this. And again, this is our estimates. TEA is going to do the calculation for us by August 5th, but this is what we think is going to be. On the debt service side, that rate is going to be whatever it takes to pay your debt service. So we have issued bonds. We will have a debt service payment this coming year. We issued $200 million. Then we talked about 10 cents during the bond election, but that was for the whole $355 million. With the $200 million, it was a little under 8 cents. So we're still only adding about a penny. So with that property value increase, instead of us needing 8 cents to pay for that $200 million in debt, we need a penny. And so that will take our new rate to this $17.4, which is much lower than what we had thought when we were selling the bond election. So this is a year-to-year comparison of those tax rates. So for the current year, our M&O rate was $2.44. It's going to be the 94.29. Our interest and sinking rate was 22.024, and it's going to 23.110. And for a total tax rate current year of 124, next year of 117.4. So we're going down about 7 cents. So that's the last of the good news. We do, and this is the dates as I talked about a little bit with August 5th, TEA. We have to go through this whole thing with TEA. They will open up a survey between July 18th and August, 1st, for us to report the appraised values. Then we send our calculation of what we think our tax rate is. They will check it, and then they will certify that by August 5th. Then we have 10 days in which to appeal that. The last couple of years, they've used what we've sent them, so there hasn't really been a need to appeal. But anyway, then if we don't appeal, then whatever they sent us back goes into effect. We have to adopt a budget by August 31st. We have to post that meeting to hear the budget on the hearing on the budget and tax rate by the 21st, because it has to be 10 days notice, and then we have to adopt a tax rate by September 30th. Budget has to be adopted before the tax rate. So this is what 22-23 looks like at this point in time. Using those numbers that I had from 21-22, we will have a beginning fund balance instead of 53 million of 46.7 million. And as I talked about how close those local and state revenues were, I think the local was about 77 million on the previous slide, and the state was like 74. See how much difference that makes now with that increased property values. We've now gone to local revenues of 91 million and state revenues of only 64 million. So their share has gone way down, and that's part of what we've talked about before. Increases in property values don't really help us. They don't necessarily hurt us because our revenue is calculated based on our student counts. That's why that ADA is so important. But our revenue won't change a whole lot with the increase in the values. The state benefits from that, not us. So anyway, that's going to give us total revenues with those numbers that I projected for enrollment and ADA of about $159.6 million. Federal revenues, again, we still have a lot of ESSER funds we're spending, so I'm leaving those pretty flat for next year. Our base budget is $164.7 million. That is the original budget from last year, less some things that there were some additional requests that were in there that have come out of that base budget. So we're starting, that's the starting point for it. We know because of our increase in special ed, so we got this giant number on special ed up there, and I'm not quite sure where that came from.
Font size.
I wanted to emphasize the 808,000 that we have to add for special ed. As our students' counts increase, we have, because of maintenance of effort, federal law, we have to increase our expenditures on a per-student basis. So we're probably going to have to, I think that number is actually a little low compared to what I calculated this past Monday. I think it's more like about 850,000, but our other rate adjustments came down a bit too. So other rate adjustments include things like utilities, gas. We're looking at about a 50% increase in fuel. We've got increases just in contractual arrangements, such as the appraisal district and the tax collection office. So we've got a few of those kinds of things in there, but I've gone through and calculated most of those routine increases. We actually, as a district, we're not going to get impacted too much with the same electricity increases that a lot of districts are seeing, because we've locked in electricity rates through 2027. And so we're not getting impacted with that, with an increase in electricity. So we have a base budget now of 166.5. That is over our revenues by $6.9 million. That's without salary increases. That's just base budget with unavoidable type rate increases. So that would leave us with an ending fund balance of $39.8 million. The cost of the salary increase, that's in the presentation you're going to see in a little bit, but this is just 2, 2.5, and 3%. The total cost, you see kind of there, about 3 lines from the bottom. For a 3% increase, it's $3.7 million, but about $500,000 of that goes to special revenue funds. We have positions funded in ESSER, we have in Title I, we have in the food service program. They cover about $500,000 of that increase. So of that $3.7 million, 3.2 of that will impact the general fund. Now, I do also take salary savings out, so as we get into doing the budget, part of that will come out based on the employee group. I take more out from auxiliary and paraprofessionals than I do from some of the other groups because we have more turnover there. But that's basically what's going to hit the general fund. We have looked at possible strategies, and Dr. Kincannon is going to talk more about that right after this. We can shift up to the $4 million I talked about to ESSER funds, reduce the base budget by cuts by about $5 million, and then we'll probably adopt a budget where the expenditures exceed the revenues and utilize some of our unassigned fund balance. Now, we've talked about this. We've been through this before. We went through this in 2011. We went through this probably 2005, 6, somewhere in there. It'll take us 2 to 3 years probably to fully stabilize what we've been through the last few years and to get back on track, because it takes a while. It takes longer to make the cuts than it does to lose the revenue. So, we'll make every attempt to alleviate the situation, but it's going to take a couple of years, I think, to truly fix it. Anyway, that's mine.
Yeah.
Are there any questions?
I got a question. It seems to me on the revenue side that a big driver obviously is attendance. Not attendance, I'm sorry. It's students enrolled in the district, and we've seen over the last 7 years, I guess, a decrease every single year. Have we done any kind of study on why that is? My son has lost a lot of friends because they've wanted to go to other schools to be able to participate in more sports or a whole bunch of different kinds of things. I know we've made some big investments in athletics and arts and librarians and all kinds of things, but the number one cause, it seems to me, of our revenue decrease is people leaving the district. And so do we know the top 3 reasons of why that number is decreasing? I was a builder and a real estate agent prior to going to the farm, and I can tell you that a majority of real estate agents tell new people coming to town, do not get your kids in Waco ISD schools. I heard it almost every day, which is illegal, but I still heard it every day. And so I'd love to see a strategy to, one, engage that comment from the Waco Association of Realtors, but I'd also like to find out whether it's exit interviews or something, what was the decision, what was the reason that made your decision to leave the district?
Yeah, let me attempt to answer that, Mr. Grant. I think it's complicated, and we've been trying to study the leaver codes, why people left just for this year, and we saw in the data things you wouldn't typically see. So we saw more kids moved out of state during the pandemic, moved all over the state. We saw kids go to Mexico. We saw kids go to homeschool, charter schools, just a myriad of places. So it is difficult to understand why, and that's the pandemic. So prior to pandemic enrollment declines, I would say in exactly what you said, right? It's about quality of programs. So if you're talking about athletes are going to go where the program is quality. I think we've had low academic ratings, and I think that has an impact on your student enrollment. And then I think poor facilities make a difference. I think they make a difference on teacher retention, which is one of the reasons we passed that bond election, right? We took it to the voters. So, people will go different places for different reasons. Public perception, they'll go for friends, they'll go because they're nervous about their child being in a large school, just all kinds of reasons, but no official study of that other than the data that we have on leaver codes. And we've really been looking at those this year. Yeah.
And you know probably better than any of us where housing is getting built. And it's not getting built in the boundaries of Waco ISD. And so a lot of the housing that some of our families can afford, especially like our teachers in China Spring or La Vega or Midway, is where they're going for housing. And so that is a drain on our students too.
Mm-hmm. And we definitely, inflation is not helping. Gas prices are not helping. Cost of living for homes is not helping in the community. But I couldn't point to one thing, or I couldn't say, here are the top 3 reasons. You may have your own reasons that just because you've lived here longer than I have.
Yeah, and that to me would be part of we can all speculate on what the reasons are, but if we want to problem solve, it's helpful to know the real reasons, right? And so if it's academic excellence, if it's facilities, if it's athletics, if it's safety, I'd like to know what that is before we invest a lot of change in the thing that's not maybe the thing.
I think I would say it's all of the above, right? Because different people make decisions for different reasons, and that's why I'm committed to every program being quality in the district. So, I'm an advocate for fine arts, I'm an advocate for athletics, for CTE, for academics, because if everything is healthy, then people are going to want to be with you. So, but people will leave for different reasons, and that's been my experience for many years, having been an educator for so long, too long, so long. So I'd love to hear any other thoughts you have about it.
I have a question about the leaver codes. Do we have information about those leaver codes before the pandemic to compare to during the pandemic?
We do. We code every year for leavers. So we can go back and look at any one year for that. And what we saw that was different recently was more kids going more places. So typically, they might stay local, or they might go to homeschool or a charter school. This time, you saw kids go out of state more and more across the state than in previous years. Yeah, it is interesting and hard to follow.
Yeah, I mean, I do give thanks to God every day that we are now out of the district of doom in 6A football. But that comes with a cost. That comes with a significant cost financially. And so while it's helpful to play teams that aren't so intimidating, it also means that we have fewer resources to invest into those teams.
Any other questions, comments?
Just one more. So in this, the issue that we're facing right now is based on enrollments and not attendance?
Both.
Both.
Are
Okay.
you ready for me to talk about budget cuts?
Great,
You guys ready for me to make?
Let's do it. Let's move on to item 13.
So I think you heard Cheryl talk about some of her processes for getting to next year's budget. It is a process. It's a lengthy process. She's been at it for weeks. We've been at it for weeks thinking about where we're going to land and what kinds of cuts we need to make and what will our strategy be for those cuts. It's been difficult, and we had to wait far into the school year. It was March. I'm looking for Cheryl. She's behind the column, I think. But it was way into March before we learned what the state was going to do in terms of hold harmless for us. And so we knew, end of March, we knew we would get some help. We didn't know what that would be. And so we did get the help for the ADA for the first 6 weeks, not the last 6 weeks. So it has been complicated, and it has taken some time. So what's been important to us, though, is we've talked about the budget and we've talked about next year is being able to give raises to our employees, because we want to keep our really good teachers and employees in Waco ISD, and we know that inflation has definitely impacted them. So we do have an item later after TASB. We have our TASB representative here to talk about our pay schedules. But we do have a recommendation later, too, for you to consider regarding salary increases. So what we've targeted $5 million worth of cuts, at the same time raising salaries by that $3.2 million in the general fund that Ms. Davis spoke about, and then continuing to work through the process and see where we land by August. So it is, I want to remind you that it's a process. So I want to tell you some things that we have, that we're kind of settling on after looking at this for several weeks. And I told you about administrative cuts at the administration building. So in your memo there, you can see we've identified $1,258,000 from this building and other centralized services, and that would be the facilities department primarily. There are a couple of positions there that we think we can save, and some other costs that are in line items in those budgets. So that's pretty straightforward. We haven't had conversations with employees in this building yet, but we do have some retirements that we know of that are calculated in there, and we do have some people who are moving. For example, our chief of staff is moving out of state sometime this summer, hopefully later in the summer, but I will not be replacing him in that position, so that's included in there. Also, the second bullet there is a reduction in teaching positions of $1.2 million. That's strictly through attrition, meaning that we anticipate needing 20 less teachers because we have less students. And so with teacher turnover, we shouldn't be asking anyone to leave. We just won't fill some of the vacant positions. The next item there is a reduction of $300,000 in discretionary non-payroll allocations. and that would be for campuses and departments, and that would be a 10% cut in those allocations. Those are going to be things like supplies, travel, contracted services, things that are in each department's budget. And we're still scrubbing budgets. Again, it's a process. Cheryl's going through and checking all of the items to see what we can take out. And so 10% is the target, $300,000 at this time. That may increase by next month as we continue to study. And then the next one is a reassignment of first and second grade literacy aids at a total of $1,134,000, and library aids at $429,000. And that's 37 first and second grade aides across the district. Each teacher currently shares an aide in first and second grade. And we currently have enough vacant positions to move people, so no one would lose a job. We would just route them to a new position within the district. We decided to keep kindergarten aides. That not every district has kindergarten aides, and Waco ISD spends more than comparable school districts on aides. And we knew that. We appreciate our aides. They helped us greatly during the pandemic. But this is an area where we're overspending. So 37 positions there. And then 14 library aides. Again, we feel like we can move those positions into other vacant positions, those people. And that would be 14 positions. And so that's $429,000 total in those areas. And then the last area there is a reduction of secondary administrative and or non-classroom professional positions at about $500,000. And we completed a staffing study in 2019, 2020. When I got here, it was actually finished in May of 20 by the Texas Association of School Boards, and they identified areas where we might need to add, such as librarians and counselors, and you saw us add those things with our ESSER funds when we got that additional money. But they also identified areas where we were out of norm, where we were too high, and that was classroom aides, and then administrative, professional positions, primarily at the secondary level. So we would propose reducing by about $500,000 there. Doesn't take long to get to that amount when you look at administrative salaries, and it wouldn't be a huge impact to any one campus. What else did I want to tell you? I wanted to tell you that on the classroom reduction, those 20 teachers, that would not impact class size. Again, we're losing students, so we need less teachers. So we are still bound by the 22-to-1 law in K-4 by the state, so we would still follow those state guidelines, and we're not looking to increase class sizes as a part of our cuts. And those cuts that I've talked about total $4,821,000, and we'll continue to study the budget until we get to August and try to reach that target of $5 million. And that's where we are at this time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about that. And I might make one more comment, that those are hard cuts to make, but they're not gutting any programs. So when we're talking about athletics or CTE or fine arts, things that are important to us, literacy, academic interventions for students, those are not in these cuts. Those are things that are important to maintain, and so we've really tried to stay away from those kinds of decisions at this point.
Mr. Guillory.
So is this really a 2 to 3 year journey, or is this something that that you see us being able to fix in the near future?
I do. I think we don't know what enrollment will do next year and the following year. So, we've had such volatility in the numbers that you just wouldn't see this ever. Definitely caused by the pandemic, but I think we can get there. Now, does that mean we're not going to have to make some more cuts? Probably not. We'll probably have to make some more cuts next year. We're thankful we have the ESSER funding to help us. We did make some decisions to pull back on some projects in ESSER to get that $4 million that we can use over the next couple of years. So that will definitely help us. And then I think, we'll see where attendance is this year, and we may need to make some more cuts for the following year. But, we have a healthy fund balance. I think, we definitely want to give the raise to our employees. The cuts are important to be able to do that. And then we'll watch enrollment and ADA over the course of next year and see where we are. But you don't want to use your fund balance for too long, right? But we could for a year or two at a low level. I don't see Cheryl. She may not have heard that, but.
Mr. Davis?
There you go.
Mr. Trustee Davis?
Yes, I just wanted to confirm, so the 20 teaching positions, they'll be through attrition. So we're not losing any teachers, and classroom sizes will stay the same. And the aide positions will just be transferred to another role.
Right, be absorbed.
But these people will not lose their jobs.
Correct.
Happy to hear about that.
Yes, thank you. The only area where it might be challenging for us is at the administration building. I know we have some retirements in those 17 positions, but we may have some that we may need to slot in somewhere else or figure out, and we'll do that. But hard, but we can do it. We can make this happen.
Just want to say, Dr. Kincannon, you and your team, I know that this is never an easy subject, and I really appreciate the care that you guys have put into it to really ensure that it's, as much of this is done through attrition, and it really is not going to impact people's livelihoods. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. And moving on to the next, if there's no further discussion, moving on to the next item, which is 14, review and discuss the Texas Association of School Boards Pay Maintenance Study Guide. Mrs. Martin. Welcome. I think the last time we saw you was via Zoom.
Yes. Let me raise this up. Actually, the past 2 years. This is the first time I've ever been in person, other than for interviews and working with the district. So it's good to be
That was 2019, I think.
Yes, it was. And you were talking about the staffing study that my colleague Zach did, and then I did the pay review. So this has been my third year to work with the district on pay. And I'm very excited to bring our findings and our recommendations to the board today. I've been working really closely with, district administration like we do every year. But it is nice to have a consistent district to work with and to really understand the history and where you're going with all of this. So we do have a brief presentation today. Please feel free to stop me, ask questions, or you can wait until the end. Either way, whatever works for you, it does not offend me either way. I want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable with it. We are going to do a little background on the pay study since we do have some new board members. We want to make sure everybody understands, and that way, you can understand a market-based compensation system is what we've implemented here in Waco ISD, and we continue to do so. So we're going to talk a little bit first about the process that we go through every year. Since we do pay maintenance, because 3 years ago we actually did a pay review. And so we did a deep dive into the systems, we rebuilt the system, we aligned your structures to market and did some things, and now we're able to maintain. So we look at specific things every single year that we want to work on, obviously making sure that we have competitive pay for retention, recruitment efforts, but also making sure that the structures are strong so that way current employee pay can continue to move to the market value or stay aligned with market. So our process every year is to work with district admin to talk about goals and objectives for the pay system, what kind of the budget outlook looks like, any challenges that they're having in the district, We do that through kickoff discussions, and then we do a pay data kind of overview. How has the system been implemented? How's it going? What do we want to work on this year? We gather market data as well as data from the district, and we match common jobs. So a lot of times we get questions about, well, I don't see certain jobs whenever we're looking at market value. So we benchmark for about 150 jobs every year that are common to all districts in the state of Texas. We are lucky because TASB has access to every district, right? And we do a salary survey every year, and the majority of our districts participate. From that data, we're able to really understand school jobs and where they compare within the school market. The other things that we look at for market data is we do look at statewide data for your directors and above, because the market for Waco ISD, the geographic market, is kind of all over the place in enrollment size. And so we want to make sure we have a large enough data set when we're thinking about that. The other thing that we look at for certain jobs is we look at how do they compare to the non-school market, so the private sector. You know, those technology jobs, some of your business, some of those other type of jobs that, you know, we're looking at, okay, they can go make $15 an hour here, or they can go and they can make a much larger salary. So we do look at that when we're thinking about market. And then we really look at our models for improvement. So we look at aligning our pay structures to make sure they're competitive with market value. We also look at what is employee pay doing individually. You know, are we aligned with market for individual employee pay? If not, what do those positions look like, and where do we need to make adjustment? So just quickly, in case you know you're not quite familiar with compensation in schools, but we do have certain objectives for our pay system. So when we're thinking about that, we really use pay to recruit employees. We think about those competitive entry rates, so starting rates, right? That's been in the media for the past couple of years, but we're really thinking about, you know, can we pull those employees in with that really strong rates? We're also looking for competitive pay for those experienced new hires. So while Waco does attract a lot of young professionals, right, or young employees, we also want to look at those experienced employees and bringing that talent into our district. So we need to be able to offer competitive salaries. Same thing if we're trying to recruit a unique talent for our leadership positions and things like that. We want to make sure that we're able to offer those salaries to bring them in. We also use pay to really pay for the job value. We don't want to overpay for a job, but we certainly don't want to underpay either. So we want to try to be as aligned and on target for market as we can for those positions. And when we aren't, we need to try to adjust accordingly. We also use pay to retain our employees. So of course we want to keep our veteran employees, all of those people that we've invested in. We want them to stay with Waco ISD, so we are going to try to advance their pay to market rates as fast as we can, with it being within the budget, and you know, because we always have to think about that. And then making sure that we are providing those pay increases as much as we can for our employees every year. But you know, the goal there is to do it within available and budgeted funds. And then last but certainly not least, and this is definitely where the board comes in, we have to control costs, right? We don't have an unlimited bucket of money, and so we have to really think about salary planning within our current budget. We just had a budget presentation, and we have to think, okay, well, where can we give raises? What type of raises within the budget that we have? So quickly, just market pay strategy. If you think about it as a target, our market value really is the center of that target. If someone is exactly at market value for the position, then they're about 100% of market. We would call a competitive range 10% above and 10% below for the most parts for most jobs. Not all jobs. Some jobs you might pay 120%. Some jobs you might have right towards that 90% mark. But what we would say is if we see individual positions that are below the 90%, we would want to find out why that is, and if that rate needs to be adjusted, we would do so. Sometimes we get questions about, well, we have someone that's above the pay range, they're at 120%, why would that be? Well, think about it. Maybe if you're trying to attract an athletic director or some top leader or some great talent, you might need to lead the market greatly in order to bring that talent to the district. We want to make sure that the majority of our positions are aligned around market value. We would say, for teachers, we certainly want to lead the market, right? We want to be above the market if we can. Some of those other really critical need area jobs, special education related services, your custodians, your cafeteria, all of those different pieces, any type of hourly workers, we want to make sure that we're competitive with market. And so that's what we do for a market-based strategy. We're really making sure that we're looking at market rates every year, we're adjusting jobs to the market, and that we are making sure that our structures are strong and aligned to make sure that competitive pay is for every employee. Any questions on markets or on compensation for schools before we get into Waco? Okay. All right, so every year we look at a market. So your market is your geographic area, and those are going to be the districts that you compete with. And so we do pull in actually some that are maybe a little bit further away than maybe you would think. But remember that we're not only competing for our hourly jobs, we're also competing for our teachers as well as for our administrative and professional jobs. And sometimes we're going to look in larger districts to try to bring that talent. So you can see here, as I said, that the market looks a little bit different. We have enrollment in districts of, anywhere from Midway, that's 8,200, and then you have your larger districts that are in the 40,000s. So when we're thinking about that local market, you do have a lot of variance there. You can see that there were 2 districts this year that did not participate in our salary survey. That would be DeSoto and Tyler. So we were not able to get market for them, but we were able to get their teacher hiring schedule, so we do have them for the teacher market. When we're thinking about non-school market, we also, TASB HR Services pays for 2 third-party vendors. We pay for Economic Research Institute and Comp Analyst. And so we do use those values for non-school market for the Waco area. So this is hard to see, but you probably can see it better on your devices. So one of the things that we look at when we get into teachers is we think about demographics. And so we think about the experience of our current teachers, and then we, in the next slide, we'll see here in just a minute, we think about the experience of those that we're attracting, teachers that we're attracting to our district. So you can see that, in general, a large percentage of your, lower years of experience, so 0, 1 to 5, we can see a large percentage there in Waco ISD. We would say that, the sweet spot is at 6 to 10, 10 and 11 to 15, right? Because they're trained, they're really great in the classroom, doing all those things. So, just knowing that much of your teacher workforce are younger in the profession. And so you've got to make sure that you do have those competitive salaries in order to retain. So again, demographics are just something to look at every year to say, okay, who are we hiring? Who are we keeping? Do we have a lot in the retirement area that we need to think about? All of those type of things. So for newly hired teachers, you can see here that you do attract a large percentage of 0-year teachers. Part of that is you do have a college here, right? And you attract some of those, but again, you do have younger teachers that are coming to here. That's great, but you have to remember that they're not as trained, that you have to invest a lot more into those 0-year teachers. So right now, this is a market graph for teacher pay. So you can see that Waco ISD is the orange line, and then you have your market median, which is the blue line. And so you can see there to where, a salary basically compares at the surveyed years. We survey for years 0, 5, 10, 15, and 20, and you can kind of see that your pay is very closely aligned to median there. And so what we would like to see is for that orange line to be above, if possible, for teachers. And so that's what we're striving to do whenever we do give pay increases. So in number, or in values, you can see here to where the district compares. So at 0 years, or what we would call starting salary, or that job fair number, you are a little bit below $650, so you're pretty close to market, but just slightly below. And then as we go through the surveyed years, you can see even though you're at market, the dollar differential is still a little bit below until you get to 20 years. So what we would say here is, we definitely want to consider giving a pay increase, and what that looks like obviously needs to be within the funds that are available. But we do know that the market is going to shift at least at a minimum 2% next year. It's likely it may be even more aggressive because we are seeing districts come out with a 3 and 4%. And so from our quick poll that we gave to districts probably about a few weeks ago, we just kind of put out an article on it. We are seeing that a lot of districts are averaging between 2.5 and 3% to where in the past we've seen about 2%. So we are anticipating that the market will shift a minimum of 2%, if not 3% this next year, and that's something to consider whenever you're thinking about where your current pay is. Other things that we look at is we look at your teaching area stipends. So these would be stipends that you're adding for those critical need areas. This is certainly not all the stipends that are provided to teachers in the district. These are the stipends that we survey for and that we benchmark for. And so you can see here to the stipends that you provide in those critical needs areas and where they compare to the median. And so obviously the secondary math and science, you offer a lot for that particular stipend. You can see there for your special education where you compare. Bilingual, we always say throw all the money to bilingual, and then where your ESL stipends are. So overall, we would say that these particular stipends are competitive. Any reason why you would change these would be if you're struggling with retention or recruitment in those specific areas and if you felt like you needed to offer more. We always say, it's best to give as much as you can to base salary. However, these add-ins do help, and it tends to cost less, right, to be able to give stipends for some areas than it is to give money across the board. Moving on to your exempt positions. So this would be all of your other professionals, your administrators, your professionals, business people, those that are basically exempt, right? These are your salaried people. We basically break this market down into 3 groups. So we have central administration, your campus administration, which is only principals and assistant principals for the purpose of this report, and then professionals would be everyone that is not included in those 2 other groups. And so looking here, you can see that, again, we're about 99 to 100% of market for employee pay. And where the pay grade midpoint is basically your structure. So your structure is right around the 100 to 105%. So your structures are competitive, and really your employee pay is aligned with market, but we would like, your pay to, again, continue to move along. And so if we don't give a little bit of increase or make adjustments there, then we could get behind next year.
Sorry to interrupt you. Excuse my ignorance. Can you define exempt and non-exempt for us?
So an exempt means that you are basically a salaried employee in the sense that you work more than 40 hours a week, you're a professional, you're an administrator, a teacher is considered an exempt employee, you're not hourly, you're not paid by the hour. And a non-exempt employee, which we'll get to here in a minute, is going to be your hourly workers. So they, basically are paid by hour. After 40 hours a week, they have the overtime, things like that. And that's kind of the distinction there. Okay, good question. All right, so when we're thinking about our exempt, again, aligned with market pretty much, but we would like to see them probably a little bit stronger. Professional, you have to remember that is where your school counselors are, your special education related services, and some of those other really key positions in your schools and, in the district. And so we want to make sure that those groups are competitive because they are serving kids and doing all those things. Okay, so non-exempt, so this would be your hourly. So we're looking at your hourly groups, and we break market down into 3 different subsections for hourly also. We look at clerical and technical, your instructional support, and then auxiliary. When we look at clerical and technical, you can think about your technology jobs that are considered hourly, administrative assistants, clerks, secretaries, payroll, business positions, HR positions. That's what we're thinking about in that group. Instructional support would be your aides and your other positions that support campuses, essentially. And then auxiliary is going to be your manual trades. It will also be custodians, things like that, okay? So looking at these groups overall, employee pay to market, you can see clerical and technical is about 4% below market. Instructional support is strong. They're about 8% above market. There has been, a dedication from the district on really making sure that aides are compensated and that they've really prioritized that group. And then auxiliary is about 3%. Auxiliary has also been a prioritization in the past couple of years. Pay grade midpoints are strong for your groups here too, so the structures are strong. The other thing that we look at with hourly is we also look at their minimums, right? We're thinking about starting pay. So, because that's how we're going to recruit hourly workers in. So with starting pay, we can see that starting pay is very strong for instructional support and auxiliary, and it's about 2% below market for clerical and technical. So again, it's just looking at the group as a whole and then looking at those individual positions and making sure that starting pay is competitive. If there are certain positions that you're struggling to really recruit to the district, that is something to consider when we're looking at the plan. And that should not be another, this is from last year, I think. No, that's weird. So yeah, we're gonna skip over that. All right, so here's our recommendations. So we provide similar recommendations every year, but of course the plan changes. So again, we are providing 4 structures that we have looked at market value and we've looked at adjustments to make sure they are strong. Luckily, Waco has strong structures already, so we don't have to do a whole lot of adjustments, which means that not all of our money is going into that particular piece of the plan. We also want to make sure that we're improving starting salaries and that midpoints are aligned with market and that the jobs are aligned with structures, okay? That's just basic compensation. We also are recommending 3 models this year. So we have the 2%, the 2.5%, and the 3%. Typically, we bring 3 models, percent models to the district. So what we recommend is a general pay increase. What that means is that all continuing employees will receive an increase. For teachers, that increase is basically calculated off the market median salary, so it's the average salary for the market for teachers. For other pay groups, which are your non-teachers, that includes hourly and exempt, we calculate the GPI off of the percentage of the employee's pay grade midpoint, okay? That is market-based strategy, and that is how we do it for the district. In order to move employee pay, and that's what we kind of continue to talk about, so these are individual employees, we do several different things. So remember we talked about we adjust the structures for some of the groups. Anywhere where we've adjusted the structure and employee pay is below the minimum of that structure or pay grade, we will give them 1% more to move into the range a little bit more. What this does is it ensures that veteran employees will not make less than what someone would, if you brought in someone with the same years of experience, our veteran employees would not be making less, basically. So it doesn't allow the leapfrog. Other things that we look at are strategic adjustments for certain employees. So once we apply the general pay increase and any other adjustments, if we see that employee pay is still below that 90% of market, we're going to give them 1% more, and that's going to help move them closer to market value a little bit faster. We also look at our educator career pathway. So this would be anybody that comes out of the classroom into those jobs like counselor, assistant principal, principal, instructional coach, things like that. And what we're going to do is we're going to compare them to the teacher structure, and we're going to ensure that they're making at least 2% above what they would be making in the classroom. We have to remember that we have to strengthen our educator career pathway, keep it strong. We want to incentivize those great teachers coming into leadership positions. And then for our hourly groups, we are looking at placement scale adjustments for certain pay grades. What we're trying to do there is we are trying to increase starting rates, but we want to make sure that we're alleviating compression. And so really what compression means is that a lot of employees are all making the same rate. And so what we want to do is apply a strategy where we can spread those employees out by years of experience, and it will help spread them out in the pay grade as well as move them to the market rate faster. So we just don't want everybody making the same rate with different years of experience. We also want to make sure that we are, managing our funds and that we have a strategy for any employee that is paid above the maximum of their pay grade. It's very few in this district. It's like a handful. But with what we would say is you do need to have a strategy. You just need to make sure that you know what you're doing with these employees. For teachers, we would say every single teacher gets the raise regardless. For those employees that are non-teachers that are above, you can give them the raise and just move on. And a lot of superintendents and districts do. They're like, we're not even going to mess with that. Other districts have specific strategies. And then we are going to continue to annually review the district compensation plan and update as needed to maintain market competitiveness. And so basically we've, worked with Waco ISD. This is our third year, and so we hope to do that in the future and to provide recommendations as needed. And so we do provide the cost models. Again, the 2%, and this is just an overview. You have more itemized costs. The district has that, the 2.5, and then the 3. That was kind of fast and furious, so I have questions.
Yeah.
I can entertain questions if you want.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Mr. Ochoa, you had a question?
Yeah, go ahead and ask it.
Ask it out, yeah, ask it out.
Yes.
I was just curious why I know you didn't show this data that we got, but we have, I'm new to this. We have 2 positions listed for executive directors of curriculum and professional development at 2 different salaries. And I just was curious what the differences were. Yep.
I think that's what you're referring to. So sometimes what we will do is in the market, remember we benchmark for those titles, we're giving market comparisons. In some districts, we have, all different types of jobs, but for this example, it is a top leader, right? But they do basically 2 different jobs. So I think he does PD and curriculum instruction, I think were the split. I'm not sure. So I think that's what it was, right? And so what we do is we provide market values for both of those because they do look different. And so that way, if the district needed to adjust the salary or maybe that person left and they wanted to bring someone in, they could look at those values to say, okay, what kind of salary do we need to provide them? And so they have market values for both of them.
Yeah, and that did look funny in there because it was the same position listed twice. Yeah, so it's a good question.
Great question.
Sometimes we do that just to provide the market value. Sometimes the district's like, nope, we don't want to show them twice. It's really dependent on the job. That's a great question, though.
Any other questions? I have a question. We have an in-district charter, the zone. I was wondering if you knew kind of off the top of your head, kind of the teacher demographics, the 1 to 5 years, we have 37%. If you knew kind of the breakdown from the zone and us and Waco ISD kind of.
We don't, I'm sure the district probably could do some calculations there. So the way that we basically ask for data is just all teachers.
All employees.
We don't do it by location number, so that's what it would tell us basically. But, we do know that the district has a lot of different programs that do impact a lot of things, right? And we've talked about that in the staffing review too, but even with pay, it does make a difference, right, of how things are done. So, I'm sure the district probably could calculate it, but we really look at teachers as a whole in our snapshot.
Great, thank you.
That's a great question, because it might make a difference.
I appreciate it, thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, you had mentioned that anything above or below 10% is considered competitive range. Are we doing anything to address those positions that are below, maybe in the high 80s or?
Yeah. So going back to when we did the adjustment, let me go back. It's probably easier. So right here. Okay. So when we're thinking about those jobs that are below the 90% of market, there could be lots of reasons for that. So let me start with that. It could be they're brand new to the job. They don't have any experience, and so we're going to bring them in a little bit low and let them get a little bit of time to move along. It could be because maybe that job is not an exact match in the market. It could be, honestly, that job just needs to be adjusted. So there could be lots of things. So we do consider that. But where these individual adjustments that we've talked about, that helps with some of those positions that are below the 90% of market. We can look at those jobs and say, okay, as a whole, maybe that group, we need to definitely give an adjustment there. Sometimes we upgrade the pay grade and we move the job because it's going to be in a more competitive structure, which will help push pay. So there's lots of different strategies. But what we do look at is these particular adjustments. And so for anybody that's below that 90%, after we've given the general pay increase and any other adjustments, we actually give them another percent. It may not get them to market value or even above the 90, but it will eventually, and we are pushing pay there. So we do look at those jobs that we consider below, and we point them out when we have discussions and say, okay, maybe we need to think about these strategies, and we have addressed some of that this year.
And our proposal this evening includes those adjustments. And that will be pretty typical every year.
Yeah, we typically say districts need to consider carving out additional funds for adjustments because while, yes, we want everybody to receive a general pay increase, we want to ensure that individual employee pay is addressed also.
Are there any other questions? Okay, Mrs.
Yeah, I have one more.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, Mr. Ochoa.
So do we, with teachers, there's a scale there. Do we have the same thing for principals starting out?
Do you want to take the pay grade boxes and speak to that?
So let me see if I can, this kind of looks like it back here. It's a rectangle, but I can use it for illustration purposes. For teachers, we actually use a hiring schedule. The reason that we do that is teachers are basically granted a year of service every year, right? That's how teachers work, and so they go by year. We used to say they get a step every year. Well, we don't really call it a step. It's basically a year of service credit. And what we do with the teacher schedule is we rebuild it every year based on the general pay increase, and that's how salaries move for teachers. So basically, if I'm a 10-year teacher, I'm going to work my year. Next year, I will be an 11-year teacher, and I will have a salary for that. For non-teachers, we actually use a pay grade, and it looks like this rectangle here, but that 100% there is basically where the midpoint would be, in theory. And so you're going to essentially have employees spread across, because you're going to have some that are below the 100%, some that are at it, and some that are above based on years of experience and things like that. So we pay non-teachers off the midpoint, and then we pay teachers off the average market median salary. So that's how we calculate the pay increase for teachers. Teachers look a little bit different because of they are paid by years of service.
So we have pay grade boxes, and so if you go to around page 240, 242 in your packet, you'll see those boxes. And so positions are grouped into a pay grade, and then there's a minimum, a midpoint, and a maximum based on the number of days worked. And that's how we determine salaries for those positions. And we'll look at numbers of years of experience when someone comes in and place them with people of similar years of experience.
Yeah, so my question was, I guess, I'm not really sure how to word it. I was more concerned about principals that have been here for a while versus principals who, may be new to the district or, for whatever reason, if there's any, do we keep those consistent as far as pay goes?
So we look at the market value for every job, right? But principals are a great example. So we look and see, okay, where are they basically for market comparison? So if they're above or below, then we know we need to do some adjustments there. Something the district has worked on for administrators, campus administrators, principals, and APs is really looking at equity adjustments, and we've been looking at that the past couple of years to make sure that they are competitive and that they are staying competitive to market. So yes, we do look at that. It's not only that job, but we do that for everyone. But yes, principals are one of those that we would say kind of similar to teachers, that they need to be leading the market because of the job that they do. And so that is something that we specifically look at every year and we give recommendations about. But if you're a veteran principal versus maybe a new principal coming in theory, you should be making more than that new principal unless maybe they have the same years of service. But even then, we would recommend, okay, we still want to make sure a veteran person is making a little bit more than that new person with the same years of experience or the same profile.
Okay.
And so the district internally does have procedures where they calculate salaries, they have ways that they determine credit and do all of those things. It is a calculation.
Great.
Does that help?
Yep, that does.
Okay.
Great question, Mr. Ochoa. Ms. Iazetti?
And I believe you said this, but to clarify, you do feel like Waco ISD is in a strong position, that we have created the structures, that the pay grades are set up appropriately, that we are generally competitive as long as we are continuing to take steps each year to do so.
Overall, but I think a lot of it is because of the efforts that district admin has made. 3 years ago when we came in and we worked with Dr. Kincannon and she brought us in, we had those goals. And part of the reason that we do pay maintenance every year is because of that. Now, I will say, Waco has dropped a little bit in the market this year, but you have to understand the market's been all over the place the past couple of years. The pandemic has really affected a lot of things, and so there's not been as much apples to apples in a lot of things either. So that's why it's really important that we are paying attention and that we are taking care of things as we can and putting as much money as we can to salaries. But we also have to be mindful too that we are going into a legislative year and that, we have to balance it right with money. I mean, that's essentially the thing. So it is a really difficult decision and it's for all districts. And I know it's very difficult too because all of your neighboring districts are adopting it at different rates, but there are a lot of stories behind all of that, right? And so I think the bottom line is that Waco ISD has been dedicated to really making sure that the pay system is strong and that we are implementing a market-based strategy, and that's what we would like to see in school districts.
Yeah, and we heard a lot about pay. When I got here, we heard a lot. And we've really worked to implement systems and structures to be consistent.
To address specific
with
groups
and-
where there might have been some issues or inequities, and so working. But part of it too, it's all about money, right? And it costs a lot of money sometimes, and so you have to prioritize where that money goes each year. And that's why when we think about adjustments, okay, well, where does that go and what are we going to spend? And so we have a lot of those discussions behind the scene about that through this process.
I want to remind the board, too, that the board approved $8.1 million worth of retention bonuses with ESSER funds. So our teachers who are with us now, separate and apart from the salary schedule, the teacher salary schedule, will get $10,000 over 3 years. So if they come back next year, they get a third of it at Christmas, and then the following year a third, and the following year a third. If they're new to Waco ISD in the fall, we plan to give them half of that, $5,000 over 2 years. And the goal was truly teacher retention. We want them to come back. And so I know some of them would have liked to have had that money sooner, but it really is, we need you. Please come back and we'll pay you when you come back, but we need those teachers to stay. We need the stability.
And that's a great point. When we're looking at our study, we're looking at base salary, right? We're not looking at benefits. We're not looking at those other great things that the district offers. Retention is a great piece of it. And you do have to consider that whenever you're thinking about, the total rewards package that you're giving to employees. So while it may not seem like a lot right here, when you add everything in, it actually is a very competitive package. And so that is the other piece of compensation is total rewards. And so what are we providing? And it's not just money, and it's not just there's a lot more to retention than just money, although that is a very important piece, of course, of retention.
Any other questions? It was a great discussion. Thank you so much, Mrs. Barton, for all of this information. I appreciate it. With that, we will move on to item 14, review and discuss. Nope, not item 14. We did that one. We're moving on to item 15, consider and discuss and take appropriate action regarding annual salary increases. Dr. Lopez?
Well, good evening. You've heard a great presentation of where we are, where we've been, and what Dr. Cannon has done since she's been here with the group of human resources folks behind me to get salaries adjusted where they need to be. So we come to you tonight. The administration is recommending the 3% salary increase at the midpoint for all employees, as well as the equity adjustments that are proposed by TASB as identified in the document. If approved, this means teachers will receive a $1,675 increase, and our first-year teachers will receive a beginning salary of $51,475. This all comes to a cost of $3.7 million.
Ed, this is earlier than we normally ask the board to, earlier than Waco ISD has asked the board to approve raises. We feel like it's really important to do that, especially this year with the competition that we have, and just appreciate your consideration of this for our employees.
Are there any questions? Mr. Davis?
Make a motion that we approve the salary increases as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Great. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And passes unanimously. I am so thankful. I know the Mr. Holstrom, when he came here to talk about inflation and the cost of living, and just really, I wish we could do more than 3%. I feel like everyone deserves more than a 3% raise, and for the work that you guys have been doing, and I am deeply appreciative. I know the environment that you guys provide. My own daughter going to school this year, it was a lifeline for her. She was getting tired of being at home. And I was kind of tired of her being at home. So it really was a lifeline, and really just the environment that the teachers, administrators, paraprofessionals are just so appreciative of all that you have done. And I wish I had more to say other than thank you. So, yeah. Yes. Okay, on to our next item, item number 7, which is the consider, discuss, and take appropriate action regarding the reorganization of the board. At this time, we will open the floor for nominations in order for the office of president.
Cordaway as president, for president.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, we'll close the nominations and take a vote by hand. In favor? By hand, sorry, I don't have a script for this. So if you agree, just raise your hand. Okay, thank you. And we will go through, consider, discuss, open the floor for order of the office of vice president. At this point, I'll take nominations. I nominate Jose Vidania. Are there any other nominations? Okay, we'll close nominations and take a vote by a show of hands. In favor? Okay, thank you. Now we will open the floor in nominations for secretary. I will open the floor for nominations for the position of secretary.
I nominate Jeremy Davis.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, at this point, we will close nominations. And all in favor, by a show of hands, raise your hand. Great. Jeremy Davis is holding the legacy of Norman Manning in the position of secretary. Do I have to do anything? Does Monica do the reorg? That's it. Okay, that is it. Well, now we're moving on to our last item, item 16, announcements. Before you start, Mr. DeBeer, I just wanted to say this is probably the first time in the history, I feel like Waco ISD has been making lots of firsts in history. So last year, Waco ISD board made the first in terms of minority trustees, which was a huge feat, huge accomplishment. It's history making. Mr. Davis made history by being the youngest board member last year. And I think we've probably made a little bit of history by being the youngest board in terms of service this year. But I am deeply excited about this team, and I think that there is really a lot of great energy. There's a lot of great wisdom and skill set in this team as we move forward, and I'm really excited for the future. Dr. Kincannon has been here 3 years, but it has not been 3 normal years by any stretch of the imagination. And I think this next year, I really am looking forward to rocking and rolling. I mean, other than that, there's no other words, but I'm really looking forward to what we can get done together as a team of 8 in this district, and I think the ship is pointed in the right direction. We're having to do some hard decisions along the way, but the ship is pointed in the right direction, and I'm excited to see where we go. So I just wanted to say that before we move on. Mr. DeBeer.
Thank you, Madam President.
Can I add something really quick? I just wanted to point out that Trustee Guillory made history by becoming the first African-American at-large trustee on the Waco ISD Board of Trustees as well.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Yes. First at large. Yes. I'm sorry, Larry, I did not state that. But yes, history making done right here by Mr. Guillory.
Thank you, Madam President. Rockin' and Rollin' is a great description of the next couple of weeks, as we have a lot to celebrate in Waco ISD. Tomorrow, we'll see many or all of you perhaps at the Outstanding Teacher of the Year reception. Then on Monday, we have our retirement reception, so we get to celebrate the teachers who have led us and all of the employees who serve our students who are about to make a transition on Monday. On Thursday, of course, as Dr. Kincannon mentioned, we have University High's class of 2022 graduating at Waco ISD Stadium. The next night, we celebrate the Waco High class of 2022. And then the following week, on June 3rd, we have the Brazos High graduation in the Performing Arts Center at University High School. So a packed schedule over the next couple of weeks of great events to celebrate the things that are happening in the district. Rocking and rolling indeed. Thanks.
Okay, with that, we are adjourned.